All right. Well, everybody, you're here at MassEnergize's June Community of Practice meeting. It's a pleasure to see everybody here. This is our last Community of Practice meeting in this season before we take a break for the summer. People often are very busy over the summer, and we found that it's not as useful to have the Community of Practice meetings, but we'll pick it up again in September. But thank you all for being here for tonight for what I hope is going to be a lively discussion. And our tonight's topic, I'm sure you all know, is going to be thinking about and getting some ideas, hearing some from some people who've been doing this, but how best better to work with youth and engage youth in your climate action activities in your towns and communities. So I do have a few things just to say before as we get started. As usual, I think everybody has, but as usual, if you don't mind just renaming yourself with both your name and the community or organization you represent, that would be great. Um, we do have a few announcements. One is that we do have a summer intern who you might have read about in our most recent June newsletter. Unfortunately, she was supposed to come tonight. She was planning to come tonight, but family conflict prevented her from being here tonight. So her name is Eliza Rubel, and she wanted me to let you know that she is going to be doing some videotaping. She's going to be working on, as I said, our communications intern, and she's going to be working on some social media engagement, doing some other things. But one of the things we've tasked her with is doing some video work. So she wanted everybody to know that she would like to be in touch with you about the possibility of doing some video recording for your communities about any events that you have going on. So if you have a summer event, if you've got something special that's happening this summer, she is interested to come out and attend it and do some videotaping. She's not a professional videographer, but she is going to be doing some video work. And so if you have ideas, if you would like her to come, please let us know. And otherwise, she's also going to be probably reaching out to communities just to get some ideas for what you think would be good video footage to take in your communities. So, okay. Okay, either Brad or Ariha, are there other MassEnergize related announcements or updates that we want to share before we start kind of our program?
No,
Brad, you're
I see
muted.
Brad is trying to say something.
Uh, no particular updates right now.
Okay, okay.
Uh,
And then something else that I do also like to do as we get started is just to have anybody who's new or coming to the community of practice for the first time. We'd love to get to know you. So anybody who would like to, or even if you are not brand new, but would like to introduce yourself so that others can get to know you, we would welcome that. So anybody is welcome to kind of come off of mute and let us know who you are, and so we can welcome you more officially. And if we don't have any newcomers, that's also great. That's also fine. So, Daniel, you've attended this a couple times, isn't that right?
Yes, that's correct. Actually, I think this might be my third time. It was a couple of years ago, and then last month.
Okay, great, great, good. Okay, well, if there aren't anybody who would like to introduce themselves, that's great. I think what we'll do is just start with a very brief introduction of our speakers, and then I'll ask our speakers just to say anything more that you'd like to about yourself. So our first speaker is Lisa Paul, who works with Cooler Communities. And she can tell you a lot more than I can about Cooler Communities, but Cooler Communities is an organization that we've worked with at MassEnergize in the past and over the years. And they do very dynamic youth engagement work, getting youth at various levels, high school, but all the way down to elementary school, involved in climate awareness and climate action. So, Lisa Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I didn't introduce myself before, even though I'm new, because I figured I would be doing that momentarily. So hi, nice to see everyone. So my name is Lisa. Just a little background about me in case anyone has questions related to any of the things that I do or have done in the past. I've been working in science education for a number of years now. I like to say I've worn a lot of different hats in science education. I have been a classroom teacher teaching environmental science, biology, and chemistry for over 10 years. I've worked in curriculum development and instructional design work. I've worked in informal outdoor education with MassEnergize. I have done work in higher education as well. My current work is with Cooler Communities, as was said. So I am the curriculum director and school liaison at Cooler Communities, and we work with schools and teachers across the state of Massachusetts, helping them bring sustainability and climate change into the classroom of all grades and all disciplines. So I do have some slides that I'd be willing to share and go through briefly. I can tell you a little bit more about Cooler Communities and then some of the other work that we do, and then just other things that you may potentially want to think about when trying to first find and then engage with youth. I feel like a lot of times we skip over the first part, which is finding them and like, how does one do that? I feel like engaging with them is easier than finding them. So so let me just, I will share my screen here. Give me a second. Okay. All right, so yes, Cooler Communities, as I said. So just briefly what we do, we kind of work in 3 different areas mainly, but there's a lot of other side projects and connections that we make at Cooler Communities that we are also involved in. So the number one thing that I am involved with is our grant funded program, where we, as I said before, we work with schools across Massachusetts to bring climate change education into the classroom. And then I'll add on to that, connecting the learning in the classroom to the community. And this is where we make partnerships between the communities and organizations outside of the school to within the school, which I feel like is, one of the most challenging pieces to what we do. And then another program I'll briefly mention in case people want to look into it. We do offer a free children's book series called Energy Detectives. Currently have 2 books out, another one in the works, with also free standards aligned curriculum from K to 5. I bring that up because part of that curriculum is also specifically targeted for students to connect their learning to their families or to the community as well. So there's opportunities within the curriculum to sort of give like a blueprint to teachers and schools on how they might be able to do that. And then we also participate with schools doing enrichment programs, specifically in Springfield, which is another great opportunity if you are with an organization that is willing and able to go into schools as a community partner and offer these enrichment programs. That is something that we do as well in Springfield. So I'm not going to play this video, but if anyone wants to watch this introductory video, it is on our website, coolercommunities.com. And then these are teachers from Framingham that have done our program for a number of years and talk about the program. I just said I was not going to do it. Okay. But it's a great 5-minute overview of how it looks in that particular school, which is one of our more robust communities that we work with. So part of what I do is I help teachers think of all sorts of ways they might implement our grant program. It's not a one-size-fits-all grant program. Many of our schools culminate with a event or fair, not unlike a science fair at the end, where students present their work, community partners attend the event and connect with families and other members of the community. I also help them come up with curriculum or project ideas, and we can also support them in connecting with those vendors, those community partners that they may not have any idea of even their existence, let alone reaching out to invite them to their events. And then also sometimes the logistics of the event as well, down to how much pizza do you need. And then just some pictures from some of our previous events. You can kind of get a sense of what they might look like. So here they're playing students playing environmental justice trivia. Student climate anxiety counseling was offered at the high school club created this little booth here, offering this to attendees to bring awareness to mental health surrounding climate change. Some of our younger participants made superheroes, energy efficiency superheroes, and I just always include these in any presentation I give because I just really like them and they're adorable. So I just show them to everybody. We always invite community members and oftentimes we will invite local politicians. Here's the mayor of Framingham. The mayor of Springfield has also attended our events in Springfield. It's always great when you can get members of the local government involved as well. We also try to follow up on the action items that take place within the schools and the communities. So here are students in Middleborough that are calculating carbon savings in real time based on the actions that people have pledged to take from what they've learned from the student projects. We also will try to connect our schools and the communities with outside speakers, guests, like youth activists. Our friend Tim Blest on the right there is a climate rapper and author who writes graphic novels for youth around climate change. Some of the vendors that are some regulars at our events, particularly in Western Massachusetts, where we have a number of communities. We ask, again, there's an action piece to our grant program. Here's one school's idea of having people write down pledges, like promises of what they're going to do and create almost like a piece of artwork on a wall. And they took all of these like sort of post-it sticky things and put them on the wall in their school. So this is where they collected them at the event. This, again, every town, every school is different. So what works for one school may not be what works for another school. So again, here's the Energy Detectives book I mentioned before. So it's 100% free if anyone wants to order it for their organization. You just go to the website and you just order the book. You have to order more than one copy, though, I think is the only catch, but you can order as many copies as you want. And then it comes with free curriculum on the website as well. And it's beginning. I have written some of the curriculum, but I am not, if you have specific questions about energy detectives, I can point you to my colleague who is our energy detectives person. I like to say I'm energy detectives adjacent, but we have just started a mini grant program in which teachers who use the Energy Detectives book, and this is also true of maybe teachers of after school programs or other nonprofit organizations, can use the curriculum to hold a small event of some kind where they're connecting the learning to the outside of the classroom, whether that's to families, the greater community, and they can get a mini grant for that work. And here's a picture of some of the curriculum. And then finally, the enrichment programs. So like I said, we mostly work in Springfield. They have their middle schools have a pretty robust enrichment program. We are one of the community partners there. And this is where really partnerships, I feel like, are such an important part of the work that we do, because not only are we partnered with Springfield Public Schools, but we also use our relationships to cultivate new project ideas. So we partnered with an artist from UMass who helped us with the idea for this project, where students in 6th and 8th grade designed, created patterns, and then sewed a quilt made of special thermochromatic paint that changes color based on the temperature of the room. So if you can see here, as it heats up, that black paint disappears and the fabric changes color. So there were 5 different sections of the quilt, each with a different type of paint that changed color at 5 different temperatures. You can already see the gray one on the left. That was black paint that was put on there, but the hallway was too warm for the black paint to show up, so it has already faded. So students learned about urban heat islands, extreme heat. They learned about, the older energy inefficient buildings such as the one that they were in, and they designed this quilt and displayed it first in their school, and then it has traveled around the state. It was just in Boston a few weeks ago for a presentation to really bring awareness to the issue of extreme heat in our schools. And these students really became ambassadors of this project, and it has really had a lot of life after the completion of the project. So that's some of the work that we have been doing over the last couple of years. As I said before, finding the students is hard. So what do you do if you have absolutely no idea where to even start, if you're not in an organization like Cooler Communities? Well, one, I would say try to make friends with people who are in organizations that already work with students. But how do you get into the schools themselves? That's also hard. As someone who has been in the school system for many years, has been a teacher, understands the demands and the calendar of teachers, I do have special insight into how they think, how they operate, and when they are most likely to be receptive to your email or your call, right? So the first thing I would say is find your champions, right? So many schools where students are flourishing in this work are doing so because there is a teacher or a staff member that has decided to take on this kind of work. They have a passion for it. They don't necessarily have the time and the bandwidth for it, but they make the time and the bandwidth for it, right? So who are these people, and what types of people might you want to look at when you're looking at a staff list at a school? They're the club leaders. Is there an environmental club or an outdoor club? They're the department chairs. Can you identify who the science department chair is? A dean of faculty, an administrator. I find there's nothing wrong with sending emails. As a teacher, I got constant emails from outside organizations about internship opportunities for my students, professional development opportunities for me. And the worst that they will do is just ignore the email, right? I ignored probably 80 to 90% of them, but occasionally there'd be one that would come across my inbox where I'd say, oh, wait, this one actually looks like something I want to read and look into. So there are those. Looking for opportunities for the community to be involved. Are there events that you as an outside community member could attend that the school is hosting? Is there a STEM night? Is there a science fair? Is there an art show? Our Cooler Communities events are open to the public. So here's an event where students are presenting their work. Community members are invited to come in. Great way to connect with students and teachers. Attracting students with internships, part-time jobs, volunteer opportunities, especially for older students. For younger students, you really do have to more so go through the schools themselves, because they are really going to be dependent on the connection through a teacher. Reach out to organizations that already work with students, like a Cooler Communities, like a Mass Audubon, like a McAuliffe Center. Who are the people that are working with students either through internships or summer programs or something like that, where you might be able to form an alliance or a collaboration. Sometimes some of the relationships that we have formed is just because I know of someone or an organization where we get together and we say, hey, I like what you do. You like what we do. Let's chat. And then something comes out of that. I will say you have to pack your patience. There's a lot of unanswered emails. There's a lot of, oh, that sounds great. I really want to do that, but I can't do it yet. And maybe you have to wait an entire school year for them to get back to you. I've had that happen a couple times. But I think that sometimes those are worth it in the end. You just kind of have to stick with it. Okay, I'm cognizant of time. Okay, so I want to allow for questions.
Okay, great. So I think what we'll do is, I think I'd be happy to take some questions specific to Cooler Communities and what Lisa does. But then after Natalie and our other presenters, then we can have kind of a general conversation. So are there specific questions specific to Cooler Communities and the work that Lisa has been doing? So, Lisa, I do have actually a question. You mentioned your grant program, and then you also subsequently mentioned mini grants. So,
Yeah.
can you clarify when you say our grant program, do you give
Yes.
grants to schools? And if
Yes.
so, how much? And is that, can you talk just a little bit about the grant aspect of it?
Yes. Yeah. So the primary program is the Cooler Communities School Grant Program, which
Okay.
is um, right now just in Massachusetts. And that is so schools apply to that program at the beginning of the school year. And they are, they tell us sometimes they know exactly what they want to do. Sometimes they are like, I have a general idea and enthusiasm, but they need a little help with, guiding them towards a final product. And the amount that they get depends on the size and scope of their plan. It depends on the size of their district. For example, Framingham, there's multiple schools, there's students of many grades participating. It's a large event. It happens on a Saturday. There's outside food involved. So the grant amount there is more than, say, a school where there's another school that we work with in Longmeadow where it's a middle school after school club, and they are doing a project. They're joining a town event, but it's a much smaller group of kids, and they're doing something a little bit smaller, so that grant is smaller. The amount I say, that's that's above my pay grade, right? How much is decided. But we sort of look through and say, okay, how much are they asking for? And then how much of the bucket can we give to that? How close can we give to their asking? And we try, and then the mini grant program, that is a brand new program that's separate from Cooler Communities, but inspired by the Cooler Communities grant program. So offered to teachers who use the Energy Detectives book. So there's free curriculum offered. A lot of the teachers have already used the curriculum or were planning to. So by just utilizing the curriculum in the book to make a connection between the students learning in the classroom to bringing that outside the classroom in some way? Are they bringing it home and doing something with their families? Or are they inviting families into the school for an event to share what they've learned from the book? Something like that. But the idea is that they're taking what they're learning from the book and expanding it to something outside of the classroom. And so that program this was our pilot program for that this year. We're just starting to get feedback in from teachers on what they did and how it went. And we're hoping to expand that in the future. And that is available nationwide to anyone who has ordered the book.
Yeah. So, okay, well, just to follow up on that, I mean, if communities would like to engage youth, but they don't have grants to give like you do, does that preclude their ability to motivate and engage students in schools?
No, absolutely not. A lot of times I've been a teacher, I've spoken with a lot of teachers, and they want to find you. They do. They really do want to find the organizations that want to work with their kids. The problem is they may not always know where to go. They might be like one. So I work part time with an organization called Subject to Climate, which creates curriculum and resources for teachers to bring climate change into any discipline of any grade. Because what you may have is teachers who don't teach science, who may say, I want to bring this into my classroom, or I want my students to have experience with this, but I don't really know where to begin. I don't know what's out there. I don't know who to talk to. And by having, someone reach out and go, I'm here, you know, they might go, oh, yes, that would be wonderful. A lot of high schools, their seniors do internships at the end of the year and are all constantly looking for, where can I do an internship? Well, what if I'm interested in sustainability? Where would I go? And well, hey, here I am, come join us. So they do want to find the community partners. Sometimes they just don't know how to go about doing it. And then I talk to the community partners and they want to get into the schools, but they don't know how to get into the schools. So it's a issue where you have both sides who really do want to find each other, but don't really understand the world inside or outside of the school.
Great, great. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I think what we'll do is move on to Natalie, and then after we have both presentations, there'll be time for some further conversation, some further questions. So Natalie Daly works with the McAuliffe Center, which is a center at Framingham State University, helps with the PETM, the Perspectives on Earth Teen Mentorship Program. Did I get that right, Natalie? But Natalie, why don't you tell us more about McAuliffe, PETM, and what you do?
For sure. So let me share my screen real quick. Okay. So hello, I'm Natalie, and I'm going to share some strategies that I've learned from my work with McAuliffe Center in engaging youth in climate action, specifically working with high schoolers in STEM fields. So just a brief little intro on me. I am the Environmental and Sustainability Coordinator at the Krista McAuliffe Center for Integrated Science Learning in Framingham at Framingham State University. And I also contract with MassEnergize as their Energy Efficiency Program Assistant. And the majority of what I do is program development for an internship program that we run at the McAuliffe Center called Perspectives of Earth Team Mentorship. And PETM, as we abbreviate it, is a project-based team mentorship program that allows students to work on real-world, multifaceted environmental projects by integrating STEM and communication strategies. And the projects are student-led, student-driven, and they're typically grounded in Framingham itself, so focusing on actual issues that actually matter to people in Framingham. And this program runs in kind of two parts. There's an open registration spring training session, and then there's the summer internship, which is paid. And part of my dual roles with the McAuliffe Center and with MassEnergize is implementing aspects of the Mass Save Community Education Grant. And specifically, we use this grant to fund outreach, to conduct program development, and to create different opportunities for students to learn about energy efficiency. And this year's PETM project is kind of exciting. It's about redesigning a Framingham neighborhood to be energy efficient, specifically through developing clean energy systems for the neighborhood and retrofitting existing houses with energy efficient solutions, which is going to be kind of a cool engineering side that we haven't really delved into before. So PETM has existed in some form or another since 2019, but it evolved into the current two-part spring and summer structure in 2022. And so with regard to the kind of recruitment and engagement strategies that I'll be talking about tonight, these are the ones we've successfully used over the past 4 years to get students to register and engage with us. And our strategies can generally be summed up as engage with the school, engage in the school, and create opportunities for more information. So we hold virtual and in-person information sessions that students can register for ahead of time. We hold lunchtime tabling sessions. We table at career fairs. We conduct outreach with key figures at our target schools. So Lisa mentioned something similar, reaching out to STEM teachers and key guidance counselors and faculty and staff who are receptive to your interests or maybe have more of a relationship with certain students in the school than you do. And we also paper the schools with our promotional flyers. They're just absolutely everywhere in the fall. So we conduct recruitment throughout the late fall, and then we close registration right at the start of winter break with the goal of the spring session starting in late February or so. And so this year, by the time that we had closed registration, we had engaged with 187 distinct students. And as you can see through the numbers, that was primarily through tabling. That we kind of had our best outreach impact with the students, but we also did have a good chunk of them who came to the in-school info sessions and listened to what our pitch was there. And so with tabling as our kind of most successful engagement strategy, there's a couple different ways that you can attract people to your table. And my personal favorite is candy, because kids will just beeline right to you to grab something. And then sometimes they'll allow you to hold them hostage to make your pitch before they scatter with the candy. But we also provide handouts with QR codes for more information, and we take their emails for follow-ups. And one of my coworkers actually came up with the strategy of asking the kids to make gingerbread houses out of graham crackers. which I was a little skeptical about as an engagement strategy because I thought high schoolers were too cool to build things with food. But they actually loved it. They loved to compete. And so we had teams of students flocking to the table trying to build a better house than their friends and then like mocking each other when the house inevitably fell apart. It created this really fun and easy environment, which then naturally led into getting more kids interested because they would see it as they walked by and wonder what was going on there. And the primary goal with tabling is always to get the word out. So that's why info sessions are great because they give you more in-depth time with the students to focus on content. But tabling is really key because it's about awareness. You can't engage with youth if they don't know you exist. So you need to get out there first, and then you can draw them in. And this past fall, our work paid off. We had, out of the 187 distinct students we engaged with during recruitment, we received 50 registrants for the spring sessions, which was our cap because we were at physical capacity after 50. So we fully fulfilled our requirements there, which was pretty cool. And so now that we had the students, we needed to get them to actually come to our spring sessions, which took place on 5 Saturdays over the course of the following 2 months. And this is where I think engaging with youth gets interesting because you've done your tabling, you've done your outreach, you have your registered students, but how do you keep them with you? At our first spring session, we had 32 people show up out of the 50 who registered. And this is expected. When you have open registration, it's really easy, especially with kids, to sign up for something and then just not attend. And getting over 30 kids to show up was still a pretty good percentage of the kids we were expecting. And then from session 1 to 2, we had another drop off, so from 32 to 18. But this is also expected because kids show up on day 1 to see what's going on, to see if this is what they actually want to engage with. And then they decide they do or don't. And what's critical about engaging with youth is that once they've self-selected out of your program, you need to hold on to the ones who remain just with white knuckles. You need to make sure that they stay there because they've stuck through the gauntlet and they want to see what you're up to now. And so we were able to do that. We maintained a pretty consistent cohort of about 18 to 22, depending on illnesses sometimes, students who showed up. And by the end of the sessions, we had all 18 apply to be part of our summer internship program. So that kind of brings us with the question of how do you retain the students that you've attracted? And I think successful retention requires both content and behavioral elements. So there's the activities you do and the content you provide, which is important and it informs if the students want to work with you. But there's also the way that you treat the students, which determines if they will work with you. And that's kind of what I'm going to spend a little more time talking about today. So there are 4 kind of strategies that I found for effective engagement with the kids. And I'll give some examples of how we've put them into practice with our internship. And so firstly, you need to meet them where they're at because kids are at such a varying range of levels with knowledge, with experience, with understanding. So kind of gauge their initial level of understanding and let your interactions inform your responses. So during our spring sessions, we like to leave questions open-ended and let the kids fill in the gaps. And kind of an example of that is we did this game where you were ranking environmental justice scenarios. So we provided the children with a series of scenarios and then had them rank each scenario on a scale of environmentally just to environmentally unjust, which would then prompt discussion for why did you rank this one this way when I ranked it that way. And it also allowed us to get a sense of the students' familiarity with the concept of environmental justice and whether they were able to apply it in a way that reflected the actual purposes of the term. Secondly, we need to recognize their responsibilities because your program is really important to you. And it's definitely really important to me, but it's not always really important to the students that you have. And kids who engage in this kind of work often have other things going on as well. They're usually very busy people. So it's important to recognize that they're juggling a lot of things. We put this into practice by making allowances in our attendance requirements. So we require that students attend 4 out of 5 sessions in order to qualify for the internship. And that kind of lets them plan around their schedule if they've got other things going on. The third thing is clear and repetitive communication, because you can never repeat yourself too many times with kids. Regardless of age, you can never repeat yourself too many times. So we start every session with a clearly laid out agenda with timestamps. We make sure they know what every single thing they're going to be doing for that day is. And then we send emails, multiple emails, reminding key deadlines and session dates. So there's always something to reference. There's always something to look back at. And then finally, get playful with it. This is, I think, in my opinion, the most important one. Like with the graham cracker houses from earlier, kids love competition and they love playful energy. So you might think you're being corny, and you probably are, but kids secretly love corny things, and a lot of them are just looking for an excuse to get silly with it. So if you can gamify your programming whenever possible, that often is more effective than you'd think. A lot of our spring session activities are usually implemented as games in some way because it gets the kids involved, it gets them moving, it introduces that crucial element of competition, and it also kind of creates a change of pace from the lecture style engagement that kids are used to. So we turn presentations into skits, we create card games, we schedule energizers, which are like fun ways to move your body around. And we try to make sure that they have fun with it because that will help it stick in their head more and make them want to come back. And so, with all of that in mind, here's kind of a couple summarizing thoughts. So, a large part of successfully engaging with youth is about building relationships. And Lisa talked about this a bit too. Building relationships with the kids by asking them questions and drawing them in, but also building relationships with schools so that they plug you to the students, building relationships with the people who already have relationships with the kids so they can act as a middleman to get your project out there. Um, we build these relationships with schools over the course of the years that we've been doing this, and we get to go inside the schools and table at them because of these relationships. And that allows us to be visible, which is, again, hugely important for engagement because they can't engage with you if they don't know you exist. And that kind of ties into what Lisa was saying about getting your foot in the door. And this also is kind of represented in our spread of demographics from the last 4 years, in that there is a huge shift from year to year of which of the 6 schools that we target actually represents in our summer cohort. We engage at all of these schools equally. We conduct the same outreach strategies, but the kids who actually show up are influenced by a bunch of other factors that we can't always control. Some of that's parent influence or the level of parent involvement in kids' extracurriculars. Some of that is school related, whether we have relationships with the people at the school, whether there are specific teachers at that school who are invested, whether they even know about us at the school. But it really, I think, shows that engagement is as much about building connections with the students as it is about building connections with the people who are already connected to the students, who've already done the work for you. Individual teachers are critical in engaging students because we see spikes in cohorts of students from different schools each year, depending on the teacher's investment there. Engaging with youth, kind of on a whole, means engaging with them on multiple levels through multiple relationships in order to actually get anything done. And it's a wild return on investment because we engaged this past fall 187 distinct people during our raccoon phase. And of that 187, we got 50 registered. And of that 50, we had 18 to 22 who actually were consistent in showing up and applying and moving forward. You have to cast a hugely wide net, and you have to use a multitude of strategies if you want to actually get anywhere. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, thank you, Natalie. That's wonderful. So yeah, Natalie, if you don't mind just stopping your screen share. Any questions or thoughts or ideas stimulated by what Natalie had to say? Yes, Ellen Tone.
Yeah. Hey, Natalie, that's super helpful. I'm curious, how much do you think was offering the internship a substantial part of the draw that you think got kids to sign up? Like, do you know why they signed up? Sometimes, we evaluate things. We say, like, what, we're done. Like, what made you show up?
Yeah, I would say the internship is kind of two parts. We pay the students, so that is obviously a huge draw for them. But it's also, we tend to target kids who are more workforce oriented. They're not really into the college track after school. They want to jump straight into the workforce. And that's something that we really encourage with the internship. We offer professional skills that are easily transferable. We offer different kinds of credentials that are super useful for jumping right into the workforce. So I think those are kind of the two main things. For some kids, it's a summer job and it'll also look good later on other stuff. And then for some kids, it's the next step in what they need to get where they want to go.
For a lot of communities, that might not be something they could offer. So,
Mhm.
A bunch of Saturdays is a lot of, time. We've had some success with National Honor Society where you have to do community service. I don't know, Lisa, if you guys have worked at that at all, where students have to do some community service hours and making sure the NHS knows that you're an option. Because a lot of times, They're
Not at
always the
Cooler
greatest
Communities, but at
planners.
my former school, there was a service requirement, and so yes, I've had students of mine like get attracted to outside work for through that.
Yeah. Okay.
So, okay, so Natalie, I've got a question for you, and this kind of relates to what Lisa was saying, is that if you can find, I mean, finding them is often a harder job. You mentioned tabling as your number one way of engaging the students who you ultimately got. But I didn't hear you talk too much about like where were you tabling at the lunchroom? Where, I mean, where were you tabling? Like if we wanted to table, if I wanted to table, where should I table? Like, talk to me a little bit about where and when and how do you table in terms of
For
finding
sure.
students?
Yeah, I mean, we primarily tabled at lunch. So we would
Okay.
set up in the main cafeteria and just sit there through all 3 or 4 lunch periods, however many it was. And that generally, that was always interesting because most of the schools that we go to segment their lunch periods by class, by grade. So you would get an interesting kind of mix where it's like the freshman lunch and no one's really coming over to you, and there's the junior lunch and everyone's mobbing your table, and then it's back to the sophomore lunch and no one's coming over again. So definitely like being at the lunch just in that section is really useful. We also would table sometimes at career fairs that schools were holding. So that also helps because, again, it's about the self selecting. The kids who are coming to the career fair are already looking for the type of thing you're offering. And that sometimes is a little bit more helpful than with lunch because the kids who are coming to lunch are coming to lunch. You know, they're trying to eat. And then if they see you and they're like, oh, cool, but like that's not their primary goal. So I would say trying to mix the two if you can. And I know that a lot of career fairs often are more open-ended on who they'll let in. Whereas I think with lunch, sometimes you have to have a connection with the school to like be able to get inside during the lunchtime. Whereas with career fairs, they're looking for people to come in and table. So there's a little bit more flexibility with your organization.
Mhm.
We'll also add if like places have STEM nights or science fairs. Also, another thing, as someone who has had to coordinate science fair herself, I'm always very eager to find judges. So if you feel like you are even a little qualified to judge a middle school or high school science fair project, which any background in science, you are, and you can reach out to, you can start with just going to the MSEF, Massachusetts Science and Engineering Fair website and seeing what region you're in and going to the regional fair. And you can meet students from different schools. You can meet their teachers. You can see what projects they're working on. You can see, oh, you're already interested in this. Let's chat. And then your name ends up in a program and where you're from and your contact info. So that can be another way to get towards, as Natalie was saying, like the types of students who may already be interested in what you have to offer.
Great. No, those great suggestions. Yeah, Ellen.
One more. I noticed Ellen Sex lectures on here. At a conference that MassEnergize held, Harvard students talked about that so the backdrop is we have a green team in Wayland, we have a student on our energy committee, we have some like students who are very engaged with us. We, 300 of them signed a petition to make sure climate education got into school, which unsuccessful at the school committee, but a very good civics experience for them. My experience has been it's like pretty hard to work with schools around curricula. Like curricula is just sort of impenetrable for good reasons. But Ellen, you're in Harvard. You guys did something where there was high school students who worked on curricula that they could bring to the elementary school. It was either 4th or 5th grade, and then they did some interactive stuff with the 5th graders, and it was a high school kid kind of teaching 5th graders around climate change. I think Natalie, they learned that the kids actually knew more than they thought they knew, but it was very hands-on-y. So I'm just curious, like maybe because we were thinking about trying to do something like that in Wayland. So did I get it right? And then I'd be curious about Lisa and Natalie's reaction to this.
Yeah, the kids, it was 6 through 12 is the green team at the middle. We have a middle high school shared building, so they can be in those clubs. The older kids were the ones who actually came up with the idea with the curriculum, and they did create it with everybody's input and brought it over to the 5th grade. And now next year they're actually talking about the 4th grade. So they did only one lecture. Well, it wasn't a lecture. It was very interactive with all the 5th grade students at the elementary school. And I was thinking too, as Natalie and Lisa I've met before, and one of our students was on her panel. It's interesting when you said too, what kind of things are you doing that makes it fun? For our kids, being the ones who were teaching and then sitting in small groups with the kids, that was considered a lot of fun and very interactive. So the green team members of all ages went over there and worked with the younger kids. So I'm always thinking of what attracts someone to do that. So as you're saying, Ellen, I mean, you had it right, but I sometimes wonder what can we do to get more people involved, and what is the fun thing that's also a learning experience.
Mm.
So I don't know, Lisa or Natalie, if you have any, like, is this a good thing that we might try to do in more communities,
I mean, I would say the short answer is yes. So I do work in curriculum development. Um, and it's the challenging thing is, teachers, they have their lessons in their curriculum that they use year after year, and sometimes they're forced to adopt whole new curriculum, and they're just don't have the bandwidth to do anything new. So one thing that I do with teachers is like offer them professional development and how you can take what you're already doing, but then just bring climate change into it. You don't have to change the lesson. You can still hit the same standards that you were doing before, but by tweaking it just this way, now you've talked about climate change. Now you've brought it in, right? Because I don't know how many of you are familiar with New Jersey was the first state to make climate change required in the state standards from K to 12 in all disciplines. So even like your first grade gym class, for example, maybe you talk about why you can't go outside for gym today because it's so hot and why that's bad for you, right? There's ways to bring it into any grade level. And so there is a push in Massachusetts to do the same thing. And if it does become successful, that type of work will become even more important. And places like subject to climate will become a lot more, important as well, because teachers will be sitting there like, wait, how does this fit into what I'm teaching? How do I hit the standards? How do I have time for this? How do I learn about climate change? Those are some of the biggest hurdles that teachers face when teaching climate change or bringing it into their classrooms.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I
just
would also say sorry, no, please go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, so in Andover, we've recently had our second youth sustainability fair. The first one, we had 31 groups. The second one, we had 27, but the 27 was a much wider variety of groups. And one of the things that we did that was so effective was having a climate story core. We had a little recording booth. We had a lot of different prompts for students and their parents, or to either record conversations around those prompts or interviews. And the kids really loved it because they were able, it was a way for them to have a voice. It's going to become a youth climate podcast. So that was kind of that was sort of an exciting way of reaching students. But we also had a climate change makers.
Well, Mary, before you finish that, so how the school sponsored the youth climate,
No, the Andover weekend.
you guys sponsored it. So
We
you
did
worked
it.
with whatever, your green team or people at your high school to publicize it, and then you just had tables of different
Yes,
Eight.
so one of the things that I think is interesting for this group is we've created recipe cards from all different communities. We have 24 communities who came to this Changemakers Forum, which is a separate thing, but what has been successful in your community? How can you replicate that? So we asked people who'd been really successful at a project in their community to write up the steps of implementation, the budget, where they got their money, whatever. And the youth angle has been really important in those write-ups. I have 7 pages of notes. Lisa Paul was again, she did 2 breakout sessions. And I'm writing up the notes on that with the idea that people can look at them and go, oh, wow, I would like to do that in my community, because that would give us a lot more visibility using the students and the public library. And um, I, I feel like there's a lot of really good sharing that can happen with what we're all trying to do in our different uh, programs with youth engagement. So I'm
I'm just
happy
gonna
to.
pop back. Oh, I just have to pop back in real quick just because I have to go assist with a bedtime ritual. So, yes, for my kindergartner upstairs. So, but I want to say thank you all for having me. I will just put my email in the chat in case anyone wants to reach out with any follow-up after this. But thank you, everybody.
Great.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you for joining us, Lisa. Yeah, and I didn't get a chance to acknowledge Mary Mary Pritchard has been offering kind of youth engagement fairs. Mary, are there any other thoughts that had occurred to you based on the questions that you want to share your experience?
I think the biggest thing is that in creating the fair, we have invited youth from different school systems, different towns, youth-led groups, high school youth groups of all types, who have come, but we've also invited community nonprofits who are also in the environmental sphere, because it's so important for youth to be able to network with town leaders who definitely show up. They want to have their picture taken, you know. Um, so I feel like this year what we did that was a little different was we added two groups that are much more um, preschool and elementary school, which means you're bringing in families, and reaching families is really what we're trying to do through the students, so that we can get them more on the road of, developing their own climate change time frame in their electrification, changing their diet, whatever it is. But students and their families is, I mean, because so much of the bubble that we are all in, maybe not in this group, but the one that we are in Andover, is much more the retiree, people who have time, they're passionate, they really want to do something. But reaching young families is how we're going to scale up what we're trying to do in our communities. So that was one of the big goals behind bringing in groups that cater to younger kids.
Great. Good. Yeah, Ellen Sachs-Leicher.
Yeah, I agree with Mary. I wish I could have gotten our kids this year to go there. I think I have to do a better job of, trying to convince the kids or carpool them or something, since we have such a range of kids, and now our whole group, none of them drive. So I think that's the challenge when you get the groups together, and also because Mary had it on which I know is no fault of yourself, on a vacation week. And every time I try to plan anything on a vacation week, even if it's the weekend before or after of the vacation, it's just hard to get the kids. But I think, having heard about it and understanding, and having a couple of our kids go to MassEnergize and talking to the kids, one or two other kids that was there, I think that really does make a difference when they can share. And I think there's more interest now in trying next year. So I would encourage others, if they can get to what Mary's doing, to actually do it, to get them there.
One last plug, and then I'll let you go on to the real the next part of the program. But our Andover Youth Services and the town leaders have talked together, and they said, we want to make this space available. That's not, before it was only available during a school vacation week. Now they see the value. They want to make it available when families can really come and be a part of it. So stay tuned.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. Well, thank you. Thanks, Mary, for sharing your experience, and Natalie. Any last questions? We're getting towards the end of our time on youth, and we do want to hear from our guest from Mass Save. But any final questions or comments for either Natalie or Mary, or just based on your own experience of, working with youth in your community. Okay, yes, Ellen,
I'll
this is
ask
the
one more
last word.
question. Yeah, I'll ask one more question from Natalie. Because so you said you did, you tried to, do things that were fun and to engage the kids. So are there any, things you would right now off the top of your head say this worked and this engaged them? Because that's what I'm always trying to do with the kids on the green team, but sometimes it's really tough.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually going to put in the chat this organization called Climbable that Lisa Paul actually turned me on to a few months ago. They have a lot of really good activities geared for a wide range of students, different age groups and different knowledge levels. And we use a couple of those and adapted them for our own programs. And they seem to work really well because they're very much their whole point of the organization is to get kids more involved in these kinds of concepts through interactive games and through these kinds of thank you, Aria, through these kinds of different things. And they generally are pretty, I would say, adaptable. Like you can kind of mess around as much as you need to fit the needs of whatever your group is. And so I would highly recommend them, first of all. But then just generally speaking, I think anytime you can make a card game out of something, because card games are easy, they're portable, they're not very hard to understand, and they're just like also useful because visualization is always a great tactic. So I would say card games and climbable are kind of my top two.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. And we've just put some of those resources in the chat there as well. So, okay, well, we do want to move on. We do have another speaker who is going to talk to us a little bit about some of the Mass Save programs. So I'm just going to welcome David Roman Oeda. And David, yeah, tell us what you have for us tonight.
Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. I'm really amazed about all the efforts that I was able to learn about. I think it is that we are in an effort that is so multifaceted about environmental climate change, and hearing about how education efforts are happening and address this subject in kids and young people is very refreshing. No? We are like at the end of the spectrum in trying to make what we think very important things in terms of getting savings and trying to help customers to save. But sometimes we lose perspective about how important education is in all the efforts that we are trying to do to make a better future for everyone. So I am very, like I said, very proud of being here today to share what we are doing in National Grid. And at the same time, I'm very happy to have been exposed to all these different efforts that the communities are doing with young people, and I think that's going to be critical for the future that is waiting for us. Quickly, my name is David Roman. I am a program manager for ConnectedSolutions in Massachusetts for National Grid. I've been working in the company for 3 years, but my whole career has been in the electric sector, both in Spain, where I am originally from, and here in the United States for the last 20 years. I'm going to talk to you guys about what is ConnectedSolutions, why we have a program like this under the portfolio of MassSave, and the specific characteristic of the program for two technologies that right now are the portfolio that we are managing, that are thermostats and batteries. And for those, I'm going to give a little explanation of how the programs work, what are the incentives that are associated to those programs, and how the program has been designed to facilitate customers to participate in them. Okay, so quickly, I have like everything, I have my presentation ready. Just remind us that all of us are MassSave. we always have a safety moment that is something mandatory for national grid presentations. Just want to remind you that June is the National Safety Month. So try to remind yourself about safety on the things that you normally do. So that is always present with your actions and your interactions. This is the agenda. Like I said, I'm going to talk about what is the program, why we have that program, how it's designed, how the customers engage in the program, and then a specific mention about how for this specific program of Connected Solutions, customers may be benefits by the heat loan program that also MassSafe offer to customers. Okay. Connected Solution. Connected Solution basically is a program that is aimed to control and reduce active demand. I don't know if you are very familiarized with the electric system. I assume that's the case. But there's times in the system where our consumptions drive to the maximum the capacity of the system. And that could be very problematic sometimes because we may enter in area of risk for the feasibility of the program. Connected Solution is an action that basically aims to control specific devices that are in the house of the customers, and that can be without compromising the comfort of the customer, can help to decrease those levels of saturation in the grid. Okay, that is the principle of the program. Allows us to control your thermostats, or allows us to use your batteries to provide extra energy in the system. So those high level of saturations, and in the case of Massachusetts, happen in summer when we have very high temperatures, high levels of humidities, and then we have high levels of consumption, specifically driven by AC programs, by AC equipment. Why we do a program like this? Well, I have highlighted 3 specific reasons for yourself, for us to understand. The first one is operational reasons, okay? We need all the electric grid has to be dimensioned to the maximum level of demand that at some point we may have in the system. That's the way that we can guarantee feasibility of the service, okay? So that maximum level of peak is what defines all the investment, all the operations that the electric system apply through time. As you can imagine, in order to give service in that maximum level, the costs associated with high levels of demand are much higher than if we are able to modulate that demand and minimize it. So when we are able to control that peaks, we are able to influence how much cost the system needs to function properly. Okay, there is an estimation that when we are able to reduce up to 10% the maximum level of peak in an electric system, we are able to generate savings on the order of 40% for the whole cost of running the grid. So that is a very important parameter to manage, because it drives how much customers pay for the electricity. Okay, and last but not least, by reducing peak demand and balancing the supply, we are able to prevent outage and stabilize the grid during those periods. So we can guarantee that we are not losing that service that is so important for all of us. Okay. The program Connected Solution itself has two legs, or two areas. One is working in the with industrial customers, what we call customer service providers, and with residential customers, what we call direct load control. Those two groups of customers drive 4 types of intervention that we can have in connected solutions. For industrial, there is what we call targeted dispatch that is directed to big customers, big CNI customers that have the capability of modulate their load. We are talking about industrial customers that maybe have processes that are high electric intensive in terms of the energy that they use, and they are able to stop the process when we get to that points in the summer where the saturation is very high. We don't call those ones very often, only maybe 5 or 4 times per year, but they are there in case that we need them. There is another one that is called daily dispatch that has a more frequent activation. And those are, for example, batteries that are bigger than 25 kW that has customers, industrial customers and commercial customers, has for backup purposes, and they can provide the energy that they have accumulated in those moments of high demand. And specifically in residential, that is the program that I manage, we have 2 aspects or two devices that we control when we call those events. One is thermostats, and the other one are batteries. Thermostats, everyone, I assume that you may have one Wi-Fi control thermostat in your house when you basically control how the AC works for you. If you want to be part of ConnectedSolutions, what we offer you is for the possibility of reducing a little bit your degree comfort in some times during the summer. We don't call more than 15 times. We will give you an incentive for participating in that, for allowing us that activation. And for batteries, it's the same process. The same process is we will pay you some very, very interesting money for allowing us to discharge your batteries in those times where the grid is at the maximum levels of saturation. For batteries, the characteristics are very, very, very simple, and I think that is the attractive of the program. We have a group of approved manufacturers, inverter manufacturers, that are the devices that control the batteries and allow the interaction with the batteries. And what we try to do is to call them in between 30 to 60 times per summer. We try to minimize the level of numbers that we do call, but sometimes summers are really hot, and this is our first brick to try to control demand. No, because you allow us to control your battery, our commitment to you is you will receive at the end of the season, based on the average performance that your system has had during the summer, up to $275 per kW. So imagine that you have a 10 kW system battery that work full time. Let's say that's not the case. Normally it's 80%, so we don't deplete the batteries. But let's assume that we are able to reach 100% on average through your all participation. You will be entitled to make $2,750 per the season. Okay. And other important a feature of the program, and that is, I think, what is driving a higher adoption of batteries in the last years in Massachusetts, is that we guarantee that incentive for 5 years. So if you install your battery today and become participant and enroll in ConnectedSolutions, you will be guaranteed a payment of $275 for the next 5 years. So this economic condition is making that the payback of this kind of investment that are expensive. We are talking about between $15,000 to $25,000. The payback associated with this kind of investments has been reduced from 12 years, sometimes to 7-5 years. Okay. One important thing to mention here is that we collaborate in very deep relationship with manufacturers. And sometimes these manufacturers, like Tesla, retain some part of that incentive that we are giving to the customer, okay? Because they basically agree with the customers that in order for them to be part of the program and for the manufacturer to facilitate all these technical collaborations, there is a fee in terms of the incentive that the customer receives. Thermostats, same principle. Whenever there is an event, we call only, like I said, very few times in summer. We don't want to create fatigue in our customers, up to 15 per summer. And what the commitment is the following. By allowing us to control your thermostat in those days, we give you, when you enroll, $50. And if you are a low-income customer, we give you $100. And after the season, when we are done with the summertime, we will give you another $20 for your participation in the program. Okay. There is you can see there in the presentations how a customer may find out if he qualified as a low-income customer. Okay, so I will put it in the chat later, or I will provide the presentation itself, so that is available for you all. The mechanism is very simple. What we do is when we expect the next day that is going to be an event because there is a really high temperature, what we do is we pre-cool the house. So we imagine that your thermostat is at 70 degrees. What we do is the hour prior, we pre-cool at 68. So the load of air conditioning is higher in the house. And when the event happens, when the peak is happening, then we increase your thermostat between 2 and 4 degrees. So that way we are able to generate a small impact with all those thermostats. This is a little bit an explanation of how customers may enroll in the program. It's a very synoptic, but I think that it was important to see how customers get into the program. No, there is a lot of program marketing that is done by the company, by MassSafe itself, by the manufacturers, and at the end, the customer ends in a landing page where they receive the instruction to be participant. And most of the manufacturers has now apps that facilitate that enrollment and makes the customer experience really easy. So that is one of the benefits that we have seen by collaborating with the different OEMs, the manufacturers that are part of this program. For batteries, the difference is that, like I said, it's not the same to spend $20,000 versus the $50 or $100 that you might pay for a thermostat. So that goes without saying. And the experience with thermostat is very similar, no? You might buy your thermostat that is Wi-Fi enabled. You are exposed to the marketing of, hey, you can participate in ConnectedSolutions and you can get this amount of incentives by your participation. And that came from different sources: the company, the manufacturer, MassSafe. And once that you are convinced that this is something that is worth it for you, you proceed to enroll. And also, again, normally by app, we get a program engagement, and we also are able to deliver the incentive to the customers. Finally, this is something that could be very interesting for those ones that are thinking of buying a battery system. You can be accepted in the heat load program, and get up to $25,000 for your project, depending on the customer incomes. And here are the different thresholds that we are considering in terms of years and the percentage of or within the state median income. Okay, this is only for equipment cost and only for residential customers. So this is my speech. So I hope that has been interesting for you, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much, David. Really appreciate your explanations and happy to take any questions. David, if you don't mind just stopping the screen
Sure.
share,
Yeah.
and that way we can see anybody who raised their hand. Yes, Daniel.
Hi. Yeah, David. I have a Tesla battery that I think my first year of participation Connected Solutions was 2021. Is there any follow-up to the 5 years that's in the initial contract? What happens after the 5 years?
Well, you will still qualify with whatever conditions they are available at that time. What we guarantee for you is that you will receive the compromise incentive at the year of your first participation. And after that, then you just keep enrolled. And if whatever the incentive for that period is existing, you will still be entitled to receive that money.
So if we're less than, I said the 275, I think 3 years ago it was less than that, maybe 220.
Yeah, we increased it from 250 to 75, correct.
So when we finish the 5 years, would we then go on to 275 if that's
correct? Yes, you will be paid whatever incentive level is authorized for that period.
Second,
are you happy with your system?
I'm very happy with the system. It works very, very well. There's one problem that I'm having. The first couple of years it went very fine, but actually for last summer, we never got payment from Tesla. And we've tried contacting them, and I'm wondering if there's somebody at National Grid who can help us follow up on this.
Yeah, definitely send me a note, Dan, because sometimes we have those issues, and we have to. I mean, if you have produced and you have the charge, you are totally entitled to get your money.
Okay, thank you. If you have an email, that would be great if we can post it.
Definitely, I will put it in the chat right now.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Yeah, good. Any other questions for David? Yes, Ellen.
Here I am again. So one thing I question is, when you have a heat pump system, you're not supposed to change the temperature more than by 2 degrees, because otherwise it makes the system somewhat inefficient when you try to raise the temperature or lower it depending on the season. So if somebody's controlling your thermostat, do they actually know that? And if they're going to raise it or lower it more than a certain number of degrees? Because in the end, it'll get you more inefficiency when you do that.
Well, the program is directed to central systems, ACs and heat pumps. Right now, we don't have you are talking about the split systems?
Well, ground source or air source, I mean, we have both in our house, but I think, we've always been told don't move it more than 2 degrees, at any point. And basically we just leave it steady all the time. So if we were to put in that kind of thermostat where somebody on the outside is addressing it, actually, I think it happened to us once, we think, but then you're changing it more than is efficient for the system. And I see Brad has his hand up, maybe he has an answer too, but that's at least my understanding of our systems.
There was some
go
discussion about this at the Heat Smart Alliance from an expert who studied this, and this not changing the thermostat by more than 2 degrees. That's kind of a common wisdom that's not necessarily true. But what David should say is this is only a handful of times in a year that they're going to adjust your thermostat.
That's where
so
I was going to go. Yeah.
If you lost a little efficiency, it's not really not an issue.
This is normally, like I said, last season, for example, we called 13 times during the summer. 13 times. And what we do is we pre-cool by modifying 2 degrees prior to the event. And then we move over 2 degrees from the normal. So the range is 4 in total. So yes, you might, if you are really looking at the engineer equation of how efficiency might be modified, that affirmation can make sense. But like Brad is saying, the benefit that we obtained for doing this incorporate at the level of the system is much higher than the deterioration of the efficiency that the system might get.
Okay, yes. Ellen Tone.
Yeah, thanks, David. So if you want to sign up for the DR, it's for all Mass Save companies, not just, if you get your electricity from Eversource, because this is a summer problem for us, right? The peak is the summer.
Yes, so far is the summer peak.
It's available, for a while it wasn't available through Eversource Electric years ago, only. Is that true? If you're Eversource Electric, you can still access it?
This is a Mass Save program, so it's available for all Massachusetts customers.
Great. Second question is, it's only on certain, I had stepped away for a moment in one of those slides. Is it only available if you have certain Wi-Fi enabled thermostats? So for example, we have a hybrid system. It's a heat pump and a gas system. In the cooling period, we're clearly in the heat pump. But it's, it's a proprietary system with Bryant, right? Because the controls are great. Would that not be eligible?
Has to be in the Connected Solution page. And by the way, I'm going to put it in the.
So I didn't see it there. Okay, so I think a lot.
There are specific manufacturers that allows us to do that control.
I gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, yes, Megan.
I understood the battery incentives to be very beneficial, but I don't really understand the residential incentive. I think I heard you get $50 at the beginning of the season. Is that it?
For thermostats.
For thermostats, yeah.
Okay. So for thermostats, if you are a low-income customer, and for that you have to be in one of those rates that are specifically for low-income customers, you are entitled, and this is something that was included in the last 3-year plan. We increased the amount of the enrollment incentive from $50 to $100.
Mm-hmm. So is
when
it
$100
for the whole season?
Yes, for your enrollment. Okay, you cannot be continue enrollment this season and then enroll the following season. No, if you enroll once,
yes,
and you get $100,
yes,
and at the end of the season, no matter what happened, you get another $20, and that $20 that we call anniversary incentive is repeated through times as long as you participate in the program.
So $70 a year I could get for being in the program.
The first year. 50.
Oh, right. And then it's $20 a year.
And then the next one you will receive only 20 if you stay in the program.
So the benefit really isn't financial.
Well,
no, but so can you explain, David? I mean, I have the same question as Megan. So the 275 per kilowatt hour, that is only if you have a battery system, correct?
That's right. We have two technologies, two different things. Okay. One is the thermostat.
Yes.
That basically there is two incentives associated with the thermostat. What we call enrollment incentive, that is when you become first the part of the program, and in the case that you are a low-income customer, you get $100. If you are not a low-income customer, you get $50.
$50, yeah, okay.
And at the end of the season, because you have been participating, or even sometimes, at any time you can opt out of those events, okay? So you are always in control of your comfort, you know? But the rationale is that if we pre-cool your house, you don't, from a comfort point of view, you really shouldn't notice that we have increase your thermostat 1 hour later, okay? Because we have pre-cooled that space.
Yeah.
Okay, so 50, 100, 20 at the end of the season. And then we have batteries. If you have batteries, we pay for performance for batteries. In the case of thermostats, it's just for participation. You express your intent to participate, you are entitled to the incentive. In batteries, you have to deliver. And the way to deliver is that your battery, when we call events, discharge on those times. And the way that we pay you those $275 per kW is we receive your connectivity data, we analyze for all the events that we call what is your performance, and we make an average for all those. And that is multiplied for $275.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we are almost out. I mean, we are out of time, but any last burning question for David about the Connected Solutions program? And if not, I want to thank you, David, for your time, for your explanations, for letting us know about this program. Thank you for joining us this evening.
My pleasure.
And for everybody, thank you for being here tonight. We really appreciate your participation. We are going to be taking a break for the summer for the community of practice. So our next community of practice will be in early September. And with that, I want to bid everybody good night and happy summer.